Welcome. You're listening to Parts and Charts, the IFS and Astrology Podcast. I'm Chelsea Owens, an artist and licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in internal family systems, and one of my spiritual gifts is the ability to balance depth and fun.
And I'm KP Kaszabowski, a poet, filmmaker, and astrologer who seeks pathways to fully loving myself and others, and the language for what is happening underneath the surface.
Together, we explore how inner parts and planetary archetypes speak to one another. Whether you're new to IFS or astrology or deep in your own integration practice, we're glad you're here.
Hello, fellow people on this planet. Our last episode was about IFS protector parts called managers, and we talked a lot about the planet Saturn in astrology. We see like a lot of connections between those two concepts for sure, but we're not so certain that the other type of protector part, the firefighter or firefighters, have a one-to-one planet to look for in the chart to get information about them, which like we're cool with if you're cool with that. But we do think that there's a lot to do with the moon in how we soothe or numb or avoid emotions. So we'll be talking a little bit about the moon, but with very little certainty. But so that's what we're planning to do with this episode. Chelsea's going to walk us through this like major part of internal family systems called the firefighters.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, like we talked about in the previous episode, managers of the protective category, the manager parts of us do a lot of the preemptive work, the proactive stuff, preventing any kind of vulnerability being activated. Now we're in a reactive category. So the firefighters are also protectors, but managers and protectors are have very different energies, um, and can be at odds quite a bit, both internally and externally. So there can often be a polarization too. Like managers are really trying to control a lot, in the system and outside the system. Um, and when firefighters kind of feel that control, they can start to rebel quite a bit. Um, and they're also really quick to react to any vulnerability or possible vulnerability, triggering exiles or triggering the system. So just like actual firefighters, they come into the system really quickly and try to put out a fire, which is an emotion. They try to put out the fire of the emotions, um, and help people escape those flames. Um, and if you've seen Inside Out or Inside Out 2, you could probably get a little bit of an idea. I can't remember exactly what the part was. Maybe it was there was an angry part, right? Because they did all the emotions.
Yeah.
And they were definitely like the planner, like manager parts. And I think the angry part would kind of come in and just kind of like, maybe there's like they're getting too close to a feeling, and the angry part would come in and just kind of blow it all up, you know? Um, so you can probably kind of reflect in your own system, find some of that energy. I'll go through a few examples of how they show up. They can be a variety on this like spectrum of how they react. Like there can be really heroic parts. Um, there can be like really impulsive parts. There can be frantic parts. And like I said, just reactive parts. And they can be destructive. They can look destructive on the outside to other people. So they can be doing behaviors that maybe other people would judge, or even your managers judge as being like maybe not healthy or not helpful in the system. And a huge part of this work is to help the manager parts, especially in the system, kind of calm down and trust that we all are trying to help out those parts. And we just want to get to know them, but we can only get to know them if those manager parts will kind of take a step back.
Right.
And even other people, right? Not just like managers in the system, but maybe family members or people around you that don't necessarily like the behaviors of what the firefighters are doing. Um, Getting those people, externally to kind of, I don't know, notice what's going on in them or what gets activated in them around firefighter parts. And even as therapists, like we definitely have our own polarizations or parts that can come up when working with addictive parts and working with firefighter parts. That can be a little bit more difficult in the system, especially when we really want someone to get better or want someone to, I don't know, kind of stop doing what they're doing, right? And live like a quote unquote healthier life or make healthier choices. Um, we just have to notice if that's coming up. Okay, like I just need to notice that part of me coming up and be able to work with my own parts so that I can sit with some of the firefighters that are kind of activating or pushing away help or yeah, for whatever reason, just, showing up and doing a behavior that's maybe a little bit more difficult for their system. Um, so like I said, it can show up as addictive behaviors quite often. Um, And, that can also show up in a variety of ways too, like just distracting or dissociating or numbing. So it could be using substances, it could be shopping, just scrolling, drinking alcohol, all the things that you can probably name yourself. Um, what else? So that's maybe more on the destructive end. It could even be as kind of extreme as a part that just wants to take you out of the system, like suicidal parts. So yeah, working with that on maybe the more extreme end. Um, and it can also look like a positive intention for the client, like a well-intentioned firefighter that does like spiritual things like meditating, journaling, um, yeah, like, maybe even artwork, right? Like some things that on the surface look maybe quote unquote healthier or, not as destructive, but there could be maybe some fears there. It may be kind of taking the person away from feeling some feelings or feeling some beliefs. Um, about themselves or, about the world, um, that maybe needs to be unburdened. So not saying like every part that's like kind of spiritual or bypassing in some way is trying to get the person away from a certain feeling or belief, but it could be. Yeah. So it can show up in subtle ways like that. Like firefighters don't always have to be super extreme in what they're doing. They could be
Yeah.
subtler. They could be, yeah, just like spiritual parts or, just anything that's kind of taking you away from feeling a certain feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. So a question that's coming up right away is
Mhm.
because they're reactive parts, because they're reactive protectors, I'm wondering how you as an IFS therapist practitioner would work with a client's firefighters versus how a client would work with their own firefighter in the moment. And how does that differ? Do you know what I mean? Like because the firefighters come up, can you like speak with a part when it's not reacting, even though it's a reactive part?
Hmm.
Or do you have to like manufacture a stimulus, like an emotion coming up in order for the part to be present?
Oh, okay. No. Mm-mm.
No, okay.
No. Like, I think if I'm understanding your question, if you're going to work with a certain part, like a firefighter part, let's say, uh,
Yeah,
does that part actually have to be activated in that moment, or
yeah,
like activated in like its reaction in that moment to get
yeah, yeah,
it? Is that what you mean?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I don't think so. Um But often I find that, if we're gonna go to a specific part and that's like our targeted part, um, I check like, if there's activation in the moment. Like, is this a part that we want to work with? Does the part want to work with like us? Like, and you kind of contract for these things and at first it may not seem like there's activation, but once you start working with it, like then the part kind of shows up more and maybe it does feel a little bit activated once some other parts kind of get out of the way. Um
Yeah.
yeah, and it's all just it's just checking like, does that part want to be worked with today? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
And if it's not feeling activated, it may not want to. It'd be like, it's feeling fine. It doesn't need to work. We don't have to work with it today.
Okay.
Mm.
Would a firefighter part like enjoy being talked to or worked with because they're activated? Is it more likely that when
Yeah,
they're
it's hard
not
to
activated?
say. I mean, it's so hard to really give an answer because you really have to ask the parts, and I
Yeah.
don't think there's a general answer,
Right.
because everyone's parts are so different.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like it'd really be like part by part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so then making this more grounded in an example, like when I was actively smoking years ago,
Hmm.
yeah, I could access the part of me that needed, in quotes, nicotine to calm down, right? Even if I wasn't actively in that moment, I could reflect on it.
Hmm.
Does that feel kind of like what that would be?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is like part of the power of the internal family system is that the more you make acquaintance, the more you can say like, "Oh, I really do know who's the loudest right now." So like let's talk with them.
Hmm.
Which definitely if I'm like I had no experience with IFS before I actively like released smoking from my life.
Hmm.
But it was, I think, similar that like I would notice, oh, I had a lot of caffeine today. So I'm like, my nervous system's going off the charts. I
Yeah.
had a long day. I didn't eat enough food. Like I didn't take care of myself. This is why this part of me or these many parts of me are like, you need cigarettes right now to
Mm.
like be awake to whatever the reasons were. And it was like that precise level of self-knowledge that actually allowed me to release like smoking from my life. But it took years to like actually quit. And I quit many times, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I had more self-knowledge or I understood what was happening.
Yeah.
A lot of perfectionism also was tied up in that
Mm.
was interesting to discover. Yeah, and anxiety, of course. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know if that's a helpful example, but
Yeah. I mean, that
yeah.
there's definitely cycles, right? There's
Yeah,
cycles to managers who are controlling, perfectionism or um, even productivity or anxiety, right?
yeah,
Um, just looking at it like as a circle, right? Like something, gets triggered, then a firefighter comes in, maybe does the behavior, and then immediately there's, managers that are aware of, what happened, maybe judge it, criticize it, like, why'd you do that? Why'd you bring
yeah,
it up again? And then, probably like some shame part gets triggered, guilt or shame, and, I'm a bad person. And then, you swing back up to like managers trying to manage things, and then firefighters, it's just like it can be such a cycle of
yeah,
especially with like maybe more addictive parts. Yeah.
yeah. That
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense. One of the other things that helped me release is I don't know who said this, but I think it was like Ram Dass or someone well listened to, well read. But it was think about not like quitting smoking, but reducing the tension.
Hmm.
And that sounds like what you described is like the managers are judging. the firefighters, and the firefighters are feeling judged. So then there's this like incredible tension between them.
Mm.
And it was releasing the judgment that helped me lower the tension enough where it just wasn't a part of my life anymore.
Ooh,
And that was the only way it worked.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's true for all of my experiences with things I didn't want to do anymore or
Yeah.
things that I wanted to do is like to release this intense need to be perfect or great or good, which, yeah, those are manager words
Yeah.
versus the firefighter words, which is like relieving this high anxiety or tension or bad feeling.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They really, I think they want to make you feel good, right?
Yeah.
There's the
Yeah.
question of like, am I good or I want to be good? And I think a lot of them truly believe, um, yeah, that they're really trying to make you feel good, trying to make you feel better.
Yeah. So
Even as destructive as they can, look on the surface, they're really
yeah.
trying to like, get you towards a good feeling.
There really is nothing that feels better
Pleasure.
than smoking a cigarette. So, yeah,
So,
it worked. It worked for a while. I'm
yeah.
glad I have different things now, but yeah, that's true.
Hmm.
Like they did a really good job, just like most of the firefighters in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I shouldn't say most, all the firefighters in the world. Wow. Thank you, firefighters.
Yeah.
But like say someone comes to me and their main question is something like why, let's say, why do I keep smoking? Like why can't I keep smoking or why can't I quit smoking? Is there something in my chart that can help me find a way out? Like what does that sound like to you?
Mm. What does that sound like to you in the chart?
Or if someone were to come to you with that kind of quandary, how would you approach that?
Well, I'd inquire like like where that question's coming from, like who's asking that question,
Okay.
because it sounds managerial, right? Which is like makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because I would immediately like assume or yeah link the behavior of smoking to probably a firefighter part,
Okay.
and so then I'm immediately like noticing that this polarization that is like a manager part that doesn't like something that the client's doing. And so I'm gonna have to work with that first. I'm gonna have to work with parts that have an agenda, which is like noble, right? It's like, great, yeah, okay, you have
Yeah.
this goal, I get that. But that feels to me like it's probably coming from a part. So working with that and then working with any firefighters that are there because that's also going to be super important to work with right off the bat. Um, so that
Yeah.
they really, yeah, just getting their permission um, is going to be important to then go like anywhere in the system, in their system.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm. Okay, so we got a good overview and a couple like examples of how firefighters act in one's internal family system.
Yeah.
Um, we thought it would be interesting to have me kind of like ask Chelsea questions about her moon and to see if there are connections to her experience with her firefighters or the sensation of firefighters showing up in general. But before we look into her chart a little bit, I thought I could talk a little bit about the moon, I think obviously one of the most important parts in any of our charts, just because the moon is our most proximal. Um, is that the word? Is that a word? Um, is that it's a planet that is in the closest proximity to the Earth.
Mm.
That's like one of the reasons why the moon is like very important to us. It adjusts our tides. There's evidence that it adjusts our water levels in our bodies. That's the scientific side. The other thing about the moon in astrological context that interests me a lot is the moon is kind of how we find our habits or our routines or the things that we can depend on but often change. Thinking about how the sun, the other luminary, sets and rises and sets basically at the same time every day. It adjusts very slowly, and then we can trust that there's going to be a solstice and or there's going to be two solstices and two equinoxes. So we can really there's like a trust element to the sun. There's a conscious element to the sun, but it's the moon that's always changing, and we can depend on the moon to return back to its same point 28 days later. So there's similar to the sun, but obviously different in that it's reflective. Another thing about the moon that we look to as astrologers or as people who are looking at our own charts is like how we soothe,
Mm.
how we receive or search for nutrition or connection, um, the part of our human lives where we feel nourished and cared for. And it often shows us how we care for other people as well, or other beings, other places. Um, so if we're thinking about the energetics of the moon, it's really it looks to me like a lot like firefighters,
Mhm.
but there's not an obvious like urgency or reactive quality to the moon in the way that I see it. Though when I think about reactivity, the moon is where I go first. Sometimes Mars, but it's like emotional reactivity is the moon.
Mhm.
Um, so if we're thinking about, let's like, do you want to give me a random zodiac sign?
Aquarius.
Aquarius. Okay, so Aquarius moon, let's think about the energetics of the Aquarius zodiac sign. That is a sign that is highly observant, often isolates, has a lot to do with the mind, but in this like greater span of thinking. So it can be a little bit more philosophical than maybe conversational.
Mm-hmm.
So apply that kind of energetic blueprint to the moon. And if someone has themselves an Aquarius moon, maybe they find isolation or like separating themselves from a situation to be soothing, or maybe they do lean into mental work or mental reading. Reading is definitely a soothing activity. I shouldn't say definitely, can be a soothing activity for someone who has an Aquarius moon. So it's like that kind of information is really helpful when you get to know that the like the archetypes and apply it to your own life. And maybe there were moments where you tried soothing in a way that someone else tries and it didn't necessarily work for you. And it could be because your moon sign does not necessarily vibrate that way. Something else that I look for when I'm thinking about specifically reactivity is the moon in conversation with anything else in the chart? So is the moon connected to Saturn? Is the moon connected to Venus? Is there another conversation that is like influencing that person's like emotional texture, emotional landscape?
Mm-hmm.
And I will say I did a little bit of a survey on Instagram before recording this episode, and I had a few conversations that felt like the theory was being tested in an interesting way. For
Mm.
two reasons. There were some people who had really interesting connections to different planets that did line up with their self-care, like specifically self-care, not necessarily firefighter numbing, but like how they do take care of themselves. It was really like connected to the planet that was in conversation with the moon.
Uh,
But the other thing that was interesting is the position of the moon in the birth chart gave me a lot of information on specifically if there's a high reaction or a high intensity emotion, if they isolate or if they look for
mm.
um, like a talking partner or a friend or leaning in to a relationship. And we can get into the specifics on that later, possibly, but it was like the more private houses, if the moon was there, they tended to isolate or they tended to like need to be in their own bubble for a moment, and then they can come back after they felt soothed. That is when I was like, okay, maybe this is related to firefighters because a firefighter can be, my understanding is that a firefighter shows up and like removes you from a situation
Mhm.
or leans into a situation. And I think that it'd be interesting if anyone's listening to this and they know where their moon is in their chart, and if it does relate to the quality of their firefighters, if there is like a general quality of them. Okay, so that's like the what I was thinking. Um,
Well,
are
now
you
I'm
ready?
curious, like
Oh,
you, well, I don't, maybe we'll have time for this at some point, like to go through, um, like each like all 12
yeah,
of the moons and like what, yeah, what their qualities are, um,
yeah.
if you want to.
Yeah, maybe that's for the paid subscribers. Because
Okay.
that's like, you know, it's still such a personal thing. So it would have to be more of a conversation. But yeah, let's do something like that in the secret room. Subscribe.
Yeah, because that's, just as you like mentioned what the Aquarius moons are like, I'm sure everyone's like, "Ooh, I need like more information about my specific moon." But yeah, and just like with parts, like and that's what's making it so hard to make generalizations is that there's so many different aspects and like other
Yeah.
influences and relationships going on. Like, yeah, just part to part, planet to planet, like house,
Yeah.
all of it that makes everything so unique. And like, so we're giving our generalizations and hypotheses, but it's all going to look very specific to each person, which is
Yeah.
obvious, but yeah.
That makes me want to point out that I do have a pretty rare or strange setup with my moon,
Mhm.
in that my moon makes no connection to any other planet in my chart.
Mm.
And every other planet is talking to each other. Every single other planet is talking to each other.
Oh,
Yeah, so my moon is like, like, what? Why is everyone else in
okay.
the other room? You
Oh,
know?
so it really is isolated.
Yeah, and then another element is that my moon is ruled by the moon because my moon is in Cancer.
My moon is ruled by the moon.
Yeah. So, like, I don't have another way to get information from another planet about my moon.
Okay.
It's not making an aspect to any planet. It's ruled by itself. And it's the only other information I get is that it's positioned in my seventh house, which does track for how I soothe myself. I tend to soothe myself with like a bonded partner, the seventh house, like, you
Oh.
know, my husband or my dog or my best friend or someone that I like really, really trust,
Hmm.
um, is like often what I lean into when I need soothing or like when it calming and that kind of thing. I also like I tend to lean into one-on-one bonded relationships because that's like where I feel the safest. Like the moon as the planet that shows us like where we feel safe or how we feel safe.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing to point out that
Hmm.
our situations are all so unique.
Hmm.
And it really does like you have there's like some like what do I call it with you sometimes like geometry like bopping around to get more information. It's like a series of like, well, this is ruled by this and this is ruled by this and this is here.
Hmm.
And that's why you like saunas, like which is a conversation I had a couple hours ago. Like, oh, do you like saunas and heating pads? Like, yes, okay. That's probably because of
That
like
is on
these
my
three things.
list.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can talk
If
about
you
yours.
do that, like it's just the meme of Julie Roberts, like with the math. Like that's what I am. I'm just like, it just does not make sense.
Well, it's yeah, there has to be a part in my chart about like loving the relational geometry.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Also, as you keep talking and I'm trying to interrupt, Um, do you think that there's a relationship to like risk taking in any planet or house? Are there any houses that
Yeah.
are like more risky than others?
Yeah. Okay, so like kind of what you said earlier is like, oh, there's a few questions I have to ask. Like, is it risk-taking for enjoyment? Is it risk-taking for self-undoing? Is it risk-taking for financial gain? Like there's a lot of other side questions I have to ask in order to tell you.
I think, yeah, right. And because I think that like those could all be firefighters.
Yeah,
Enjoy,
yeah,
they would probably enjoy taking risks to undo, right? Self-undo.
yeah,
Like throw caution to the wind, fuck it.
yeah.
And then parts, yeah, firefighter parts that what was the first thing you said?
For joy or
Joy,
pleasure.
which could also
Yeah,
joy could also be self-undoing. Yeah, or there could
truly.
be like undoing, just like taking the risk in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's why I asked. Like I would point it to any risky or like yeah, risk taking,
yeah.
possibly being a firefighter part.
That's super interesting because the more I think about it, I think every single house has an element of risk,
Oh, really?
but often risk is talked about being in the fifth house as like the house of speculation. So it's like it's a little bit lighter in that like it's the things that you try, like dating. Like you're trying because you know that it might turn into something beautiful or interesting. Like you're
Uh,
trying to conceive a baby. That's usually the fifth house. Or you're trying to paint a painting and make it look like Tobey Maguire. Wow. But it turns out to look like Elijah Wood. Like that's the fifth house kind of risk energy. But then if I'm thinking about like the eighth house, there's that's the house of intimacy.
Okay.
Like what we risk when we blend energies with someone else and how there has to be something at stake in order for intimacy to be felt. So
Yeah.
that's a different kind of risk.
Yeah.
This is really interesting if we're relating it to the moon,
Is it?
because I wonder if we're less likely to risk wherever our moon is because there's so much at stake.
Oh.
Or maybe we're more likely to risk because our moon is like our emotional tides, and like maybe there's a high tide moment, and you're more likely to be risky with that because like the intensity of the emotion needs to be relieved. So
Yeah.
then you will do something risky to relieve it. So like, yeah, that's interesting.
Mm. Well, so mine's in Leo.
Yeah, first house.
So what would that look like for either taking risk or not?
Let's start with how to feel safe. Safety is not just the moon, but emotional safety is like we can most likely point to the moon. So let's talk about emotional safety in the first house in Leo. There's probably an element I'd like you to talk about this. Like you don't like to name your client's parts. Like it'd be better if I say a sentence and then you like riff on it.
Mhm.
Um, maybe there's an element to like if people can see you, if you feel like fully yourself, then you feel safe or you feel emotionally attuned with yourself.
Mhm.
Does that feel right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Do you get risk-takey when it comes to like your identity?
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
mm, as far as like maybe self-expression goes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like clothing.
Yeah.
I'm in like a beige sweater today. Real risky. But
Yeah.
definitely in like my 20s and 30s. I think most of my friends who know me and who knew me at that time would be like, yeah, there's a lot of power clashing, a lot of like bold prints and like wild onesies and like I feel like I really tried to stand out with my clothing, which kind of feels Leo. I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
right, being seen for certain
Yeah.
like outward image type things. Yeah.
Yeah, like being
And for my
boldly
art,
oneself.
for sure too. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Like creating art, I feel like I would take risks in like, oh yeah, I'll do a painting. I don't care if anyone likes it, just like really just creating because I wanted to and um wasn't so concerned with how it was received. So
Yeah.
taking risks in art for sure.
Are there moments where you're showing up, presenting yourself, or like those kind of energy moments where you feel extra activated emotionally that kind of come to mind?
Mm, probably. Um, hmm. I would need like a little bit more specificity to really answer.
Mm. I'm thinking about how um this is maybe too personal to say, but I'm going to say it. How I married pretty young comparatively in the modern age. I married, well, I started dating my husband at 25, but we married when I was 29. That's pretty young.
Yeah.
And I think that having a moon in the seventh house tends to have like someone who like leans into super committed relationships pretty young.
Um,
How would that concept look in the first house for you? Like, what did you do pretty young that other people didn't necessarily do when you're thinking about like what makes you feel emotionally satisfied and safe in that first house of like personhood, selfhood?
hmm. I don't know. Yeah, it feels hard to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Do you feel like you invested in who you were more than anyone, like anything else or any place else?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
At least with like maybe self-growth, right?
Yeah.
Like self-improvement and spiritual growth and therapy.
Yeah.
That probably wasn't like, I mean, I guess young is relative, but that wasn't like my mid 20s, like your example. So I don't feel like
Yeah.
that was young. Like but I guess so.
It's pretty young for a lot of
Like, I
Americans.
was like thinking about, okay, well, when I was like 8, but I don't really remember too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And then I'm thinking about I use the word investment and like the moon does show us a lot about our investments, like actually monetarily and emotionally, like what we spend
Oh,
our
really?
energy on,
Yeah.
what we tend to grows.
Oh.
So that's one of my theories that I've been working out and maybe not related to firefighters, but like wherever the moon is in the chart, that house tends to be what we've invested in our early years and then the rest of our life as well. But it's more apparent in our early years, like what we decided to really invest in.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
think that makes a lot of sense for me. Yeah, I feel like my selfhood and like being kind of a lone wolf most of my life has
Yeah.
felt like a sense of pride. There's been a sense of pride about that. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so independent, I'm so strong, I'm so, self-aware, blah, 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 blah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and standing out too, I feel like has been a really important like aspect of selfhood.
Yeah. That's
But
lovely.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't have that experience at all, but
Really?
I see it for you. Yeah.
See, I like, and I also just assume everyone else feels the same way that I do. Like everyone's doing that. Everyone's working on themselves. Everyone's like making self-development their primary, driver in life. But no.
Or if it's self-development, it just has a different energetic feel.
Hmm.
Like mine was definitely more like I found my spirituality with people or through people or, like writing characters. Like it was always kind of a dialogue where it sounds like you're creating a character. Like you're not a character, but like you're creating the person you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe this is the Libra sun showing up for me, um, unless the Cancer moon in the seventh, but some theories flying in the air. Let's get back to center. Your moon is connected to both your sun and your Mars. They're all conjunct is the word that we use. So they're all kind of in this like team. Yeah, your hands up.
But they're in different. They're
different
in
signs.
Cancer and in Leo.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
that
So even
crazy?
if they're in different houses and different signs,
Yeah.
degree wise, they're still close enough to each other where they'd be influencing each other. Your moon is a little bit further away, but
Yeah.
it's still technically conjunct both your sun and Mars, who are at the same degree in Cancer.
Mm.
And there's a lot of different theories, but I do the 6 degree rule, and it's like exactly 6 degrees from your sun and Mars.
Okay.
So we're calling it conjunct. Some astrologers might say it's not conjunct, but I would rebut by saying that the moon and the sun's influences are stronger because they're extremely personal luminaries in our chart. So their influence is more felt, even if they are 6 degrees away from each other. If you want to fight me in the comments, please do. I easily change my mind. But this is interesting to me for talking about firefighters because we were originally talking about firefighters being Mars in our chart,
Yeah.
and you have Mars, the moon, and the sun together. So maybe your Mars energy and your moon energy is similar.
Mm. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm so curious how, yeah, like what parts are like Mars parts and what are moon parts for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you say
So
Mars is proactive or reactive or both? Maybe it's not either.
I think it's both. Oh, I want to boil down Mars as quickly as I can. Mars is a whole thing, right? I don't know if we've talked about Mars very much yet, but Mars always has to cut something. Mars is the severing principle in our lives, which sounds dramatic, and it can be dramatic depending on who you are. But it's really important to understand that in everyone's psyche, we need to constantly be making cuts,
Mm-hmm.
like whether it's with a gardening shovel, like a gentler cut, or with like little scissors, or with an axe, or with a guillotine. Like um, we deserve and we always need the ability to cut something in order to have a fruitful life. So we're not anti-Mars here, but
So it's like,
maybe.
but it could be also like cutting people out of your life.
Right. Or like deciding that something's not for you, or
It's
like you have 20. Well, go ahead.
like saying no to something.
Yeah, you have like 20 things to do on one day and you can only get three done, so you have to make the cuts.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's usually how Mars shows up in
Yeah.
modern life.
Pretty managerial.
Yeah, possibly, but then like Mars would show up if there's a conflict. So
Mm.
that's the reactive Mars.
Okay.
Um, and firefighters are always reactive. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're still in theory mode. Um, where do we want to go with where do we go want to go from here with this?
Is there anything else you want to ask me about my chart?
Yeah. How would we talk about your moon as it relates to firefighters? Like what are you comfortable talking about?
Hmm. Let's find out.
Okay. So, should I screen share?
Yeah.
Okay. You can see that Chelsea was born in the United States and nothing else. Okay. And I do have no other tabs open. Great.
Yeah.
We're doing good.
Cool.
Okay, so you'll see that for the people who are just listening, Chelsea's moon is at 2 degrees Leo in the first house, and then her sun and Mars are in Cancer in the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of self-undoing, as well as many other things. We say the word self-undoing because that can show up in so many different ways that I usually describe it as like ego dissolution. So it's like this is the house that gives us information on like how we release our boundaries as a person with an ego. This can look like in the extreme versions, like someone who often uses drugs or like consciousness raising like substances to be released from their mortal cage for a moment. This can look like someone who meditates beyond their own consciousness. This could look like
Mm,
psychic information. This could look like ancestral information. It can look like comments on self-esteem or self-image, but more in the way of how um, they're the person's observing themselves beyond their own like lived experience. So it's like a very boundaryless house.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And having a moon conjunct your sun and Mars in there is interesting to me, thinking about the word self-undoing and how firefighters might show up as someone who takes you away
Yeah.
from your lived experience or your bodily experience for a
Yeah.
moment.
I feel like that's where probably a lot of my firefighters live.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 12th and to first house too, probably. Because it's like if that also feels so related, like self, especially with the body and like controlling my body,
Yeah.
but then also like controlling, like you said, ego dissolution and self undoing. So maybe there's a real interesting kind of dynamic between self undoing and then like the self identity of these
Yeah.
causes where I have a lot of this energy. Yeah, I feel like probably more or less with yeah, 12th house, like getting even with meditation, like getting into trance like state or psychic states. Um, I don't feel like it's always firefighter activity, but I feel like maybe in more instances when I've really been trying to avoid certain feelings, that feels really soothing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to avoid feeling um what's the feeling? Probably like helpless or even hopeless.
Yeah.
Um or even sad or maybe even a little depressed. Um yeah, kind of dissolving some of those boundaries between like heaven and earth have helped to get away from some of those earthly feelings. Mhm.
That makes sense. And the way you put it is getting away. Yeah. How did you say like in between heaven and earth?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And then the stark difference between like showing up and being yourself, like though these two houses are so different from each other that it
Yeah.
would make sense to me that if you had a group of firefighters, they would have very different feelings,
Mm-hmm.
or like approaches. Does
Hmm.
that feel right?
Yeah, behaviors maybe even too, right? Yeah, what they're doing.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
Where like one side of your firefighters might be more like demonstrative
Hmm.
or expressive. The other side would be a little, yeah, like how you were saying, like releasing, leaning into to spirit or non-earth experiences.
Yeah. Hmm. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, even though Mars is there, which Mars, like we talked about, has that cutting energy. Um, he's still in a water sign and he's in the 12th house. So for your experience, I wouldn't expect you to be so severing like other people might be. It's more of like separating your consciousness or your experiences more. It's like more fluid.
Mm, okay. Hmm.
Does that feel right?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I think this is a good place to stop for this discussion, and then maybe in a few weeks we'll pick it back up when we have more theories to test.
Okay.
You
Sounds
think?
good.
Thank you everyone for following us on this trail. I really like how we're approaching this as not having any answers,
Yeah.
and making connections together as in our curious states, we're thinking about the seas of selfhood, and seeing what happens.
Yeah, it's a fun experiment.
Yeah. So thank you for coming along with us and really do come at me in the comments. I am happy to be checked or to have your feedback if you don't want to be that aggressive.
Oh.
Okay, next time, we don't know what we're talking about, but we're talking with you.
We'll be here.
Okay, bye. Thank you for joining us for Parts and Charts, the IFS and Astrology Podcast. If something sparked insight or resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you.
No, really, we're here to make friends. Reach out to us. Leave a comment, subscribe, and if you feel called, share this episode with someone you care about. Or, if you want to work with us one-on-one and go deeper with this work, check the link in the show notes for how to find us.
Until next time, may all of you feel a part of the family.